Welcome to day 6 of XTC Bootcamp. Today, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our speaker, Lars Reger, Executive Vice President and Chief Technology Officer of NXP Semiconductors. NXP is a world leader in building semiconductor solutions that enhance the capabilities of people, organizations, and the world at large. It is a publicly listed company with $55 billion in market cap and reported almost $9 billion in revenue last year. As CTO, Lars is responsible for managing the overall technology portfolio comprised of new business activities and R&D in the automotive industry 4.0, IoT, mobile, connectivity, and infrastructure-focused markets. I should also mention that Lars is also a board member of Extreme Tech Challenge. So with that, welcome, Lars.
Thanks, Victoria. Hey, so good afternoon, good evening, and I guess to most of you, good morning. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to pitch here briefly. Honestly, my own experience over the last 2 decades in business strategy. So of course, what I tried to pick up at London Business School during my MBA or the textbook know-how, I later on had the chance to apply, to prove, to correct real life. And I'll try to give you a brief tour through the content, and maybe there's some useful stuff in it that you can use for your own activities. So, of course, the road to success, there is no standard recipe. Otherwise, it would not be me sitting in my position here, but it would be maybe an intelligent robot. Maybe in future there might be at some point in time intelligent robots. But to most of the topics, it's of course day trading. It's your own human sense. It's your own technical savviness or business savviness that you have to use to maneuver every day in storms and in nicer weather. But there is a couple of skeletons, of course, that you could use, a couple of thoughts that I have used in the past to help my teams, help me, help guide, help reflect. And that is by and large, when you talk about your strategy, it's about what is the identity of your company? What do you try to shape up? What are the pitfalls in anchoring your strategy, getting buy-in, and also attracting funding as a startup or start moving the needle, attracting partners? So for me, one of the key questions in the beginning was, who needs to understand my strategy? And I came up with that very, very clear ranking. And this is how I also steer our teams, governmental affairs, Marcom, and the technical teams, saying customers are first priority. Not surprisingly, because they bring me revenue. But analysts are directly second priority for guys like us, publicly listed companies, but also, let's say, your investors, your banks, investors in the widest sense, because they give you valuation and with that, money. Politicians and regulators are the next on my priority list, because the politicians either give me a boost or strong headwinds with legislation and regulations. And then number 4 in this entire tech scale here is my mom and my dad. If my mom and my dad are afraid of what I'm producing, if they don't understand what I'm producing, they are not buying the stuff, and therefore my entire market success is limited. In other words, then I don't get customers. So customers, analysts, politicians, society, they are the 4 priority stakeholders that I need to address. And of course, a bit of a different kind, but the pillar that is all standing on, my employees, and there again, my present ones and my future ones. Now, how do I want these guys to perceive me? So where do I want to be with my company? And there, what I was using is a very simple grid, and I'm gonna tell you what I mean with it. There is companies that are standing on very risky technology or innovations, business cases. There is companies that are standing on very reliable cases. There is companies that are working very much towards the future. There is companies that are making business very much on things that I would call the past. So in other words, if I sell, take an automotive example, if I sell horse carriages, I'm very much in the past, and horse carriages are simple technology, very reliable in most of the cases. So I would be in the bottom right corner. If I am Elon Musk, I go for risky battery electric technology, autopilot type of technology. I have not outdeveloped all of that, and it's maybe not even mature before I go into the market. I'm definitely on the future risky side. And if I'm lucky, I'm going to survive there, because that can be, or that is in typical areas where a lot of startups have a great idea, but either the technology is not mature enough, or the investment, the belief in the future is not mature enough, or the markets are not ready for your crazy ideas. So each of these quadrants has certain benefits and also certain downsides. Definitely where you don't want to be, this is risky past. And where you are normally, where you want to be, this is in the reliable future area. So in other words, where your stakeholders perceive you as being the solid way into the future. And usually if you reach that point, and this is a bit the litmus test for all of you, if you reach that point, then you're at the inflection point where everyone says, okay, now the mass markets are going to come. And this is why you want to be there. So 3 years ago, 5 years ago, electric vehicles, or today, electric vehicles. Now everyone understands they are reliable. They have certain constraints, but by and large, they are great cars. They are futuristic. They have a great eco balance. Okay, you want to be reliable future e-vehicles. Yeah, this is how these entire markets are moving. This is not a static picture, but it's for you very, very important to benchmark your own strategy and your own today's approach against this picture, because you can be terribly too late in a market, but you can be faster bankrupt if you're terribly too early or too risky in the market. And that is what is killing most of the startups. Now, out of that, how do you generate your strategy? Well, there can be, of course, top-down strategies, sideways or bottom-up strategies. And I'm gonna tell you what that is. So NXP is largely in the top-down to sideways strategies, and I'm gonna show you what I mean by that. So top-down strategies is guys like us, some CTOs, CEOs say, okay, this is what I want to do. This is exactly where I want to be. This is my rationale for it. I talk to the customers, analysts, politicians, society. That is my way to go. And I align the entire company to this top-down strategy. And I take my employees to develop the products, services in the right direction. Bottom-up would be, if you don't have that, or if you don't want to drive it that way, you ask your employees, what should we do? How should we better rework in a lot of cases? Rework our strategy. How do we come up with the bottom-up strategies? But let everyone participate in that. And then there is what I call here sideways strategies. They are largely relying on franchises of great capabilities, but they need collaboration to come up, for example, out of component businesses with system ideas. They are, of course, very nice for employee motivation if the employees have the feeling that they are a part of the strategy, that they help big time shaping the strategy. The only thing in the bottom-up strategies and in the sideways strategies they are dangerous, of course, in case you need to react quickly and you need to react clearly. They can be pretty fuzzy, can take a lot of time, and can take therefore a lot of insecurity also in the workforce, and then you paint a blurry picture to the outside world. So in the high-tech markets, normally you are in area one. You have a couple of direction setters, you go fast, and you are the disruptors. Disruptors have to be fast and in a positive sense brutal. So they are typically on the side of number one. And of course, if they are clever and smart and understand, for example, NXP has 26,000 customers, and understand that we cannot conquer all ecosystems by ourselves, then you are also reaching out, of course, into the collaboration space, sideways strategies, and this is what we try to do. So how does that work in case of NXP? Well, NXP, just to give you a bit of a background, is a big semiconductor player, and the old Philips Semiconductors, and we merged with Freescale, the old Motorola Semiconductors. And out of this, we have almost a complete portfolio for smart connected devices. So everything that you have as an edge device, as techies would say. And the great thing with that is that we are at the moment moving from an on-demand world where you take your mobile phone and you press a button on demand, you order a cab or a pizza or buy something. We are going into an ahead-of-demand world where 50 billion digital assistants around us start interpreting what we want to do next, and they arrange it for us. I give you an example: smart thermostat. Thermostat knows who of Lars's family is at home, how is the weather forecast. So I'm sensing the environment, where are the inhabitants, I'm getting data from the cloud, weather forecast. I think then of a smart advice, and I send this smart advice to the climate control or heating of the house. And this is how I anticipate how the house should be steered to have a nice climate every time when someone is at home. By mid of this decade, we want to have 50 billion of such devices. By the end of this decade, we have 100 billion of those devices. So in other words, what is happening is we are moving from a cloud and smartphone on-demand world as of today, market size 250 billion semiconductors, or 2010, 250 billion, we are bigger now, into almost 500 billion now, and that thing is steeply gonna grow in this trend now of the secure edge, as the techies call it, but in principle into the world of smart connected devices. And it is not really important whether these smart connected devices have wheels, so are autonomous vehicles, have a robot arm, are a manufacturing robot, are a smartwatch, are a smart passport, or are my smart thermostat. They all have the same ingredients, as I said prior. Of course, very different form factors, but they need to sense their environment. They have to connect to the cloud. They have to calculate a smart advice out of that. And they have to send this to the actuators of your robot. This is the ingredients of robotics. And this is what NXP is going to enable. And you don't trust, and you don't want to have your robots if you cannot trust your robots. So if you want to trust your devices and you want to transfer responsibilities to these devices, then you also need safety and security. The good news is we are mastering since years in the automotive space functional safety. So how do you build redundant electronics that your braking systems never fail? And what you're going to do is also we are providing 80% of all biometric passport chips, the mobile payment in your phones, and contactless banking cards. So we are also deeply involved in our traditional markets in hacking security robustness. So how do you trust your device? You make them functional, safe, and hacking robust, and you have sensing, connect, act, and you have all ingredients for any smart connected device. That is the top-down strategy of NXP. Very simple. Now, we have industry verticals. 50% of the company sells into automotive, another 20% into industrial and IoT, mobile payment, for example, and comms and infrastructure. And we have identified then, of course, out of that skeleton, the key growth drivers that are driving us forward in terms of revenue growth. What are the pockets in the market that are growing faster than average? How do we get higher relative market shares compared to our competition, and so on? So very clear narrative from the top then to the product portfolio. And that is, of course, the, I would say, ivory tower academic part of that entire thing. What that means now for me and for my colleagues on the board of NXP, every one of us is looking at key components on our management agenda. And I took here quite some key components out of my own management agenda and tried to broaden it so that it really applies to the entire company, to an entire startup. By and large, and this is true real life components, I obfuscated some, so took some business figures out, but by and large, you see here the skeleton of my key components for my job. It is strategy on strategy clarity and portfolio clarity. That is what we need to have. Very, very much so. Spend a lot of time there. And therefore make your product roadmaps consistent. So if you have that high-level story in place, benchmark everything against that high-level story. And then be consistent. By all means, be consistent in Marcom, in the sales force, in governmental affairs, investor relations, strategy, and business line. talk, collateral, data sheets. So if you can craft this top down to the data sheets, you have basically the biggest lifting done already. The other side then is, of course, the R&D execution and the world-class manufacturing. Those two processes don't need a lot of creativity anymore. In principle, they are areas where you have to be totally humor-free and have to just precisely execute. Like a surgeon, surgeons shouldn't have creativity, they need precision. And this is, of course, what we are doing then in terms of synchronize the IP and technology roadmaps, the building blocks. If you synchronize them, you can harmonize them, you can scale. Therefore, you can get flawless and timely execution. So if you limit your workbench, if you clean that up. Therefore, you can meet and sometimes even exceed your planning. That gives you more degrees of freedom for an additional learning cycle and for hardening the quality that you are driving to your customers. And of course, a lot of that stands and falls with good measurement. World-class manufacturing, I'm not going to touch here. I could easily do now a 2.5-hour lecture on that one. For a lot of startups, not that much required because a lot of the manufacturing is not in-house. If it might get very capital intense, but that's a different asset, bigger boulder to roll. But then the last point here, for a global player like NXP, 60 development centers, 30,000 employees, equally important as for a 5-people startup. Workforce, workforce, workforce. And the most investors, or when we do M&A activities, the first look is always can I trust the management team? Do they know their stuff? What is their competence? So in other words, what is their strategic workforce planning? Again, are they clear in competence and demographics? Do they have a clear site footprint? How about their diversity? And just mind you, we all, when I say diversity, we always think about gender diversity and so on. What I mean here is much broader. How heterogeneous are your teams? It does not help if I would have in my management team only 50-year-old, gray-haired German men, 3 kids, 1 SUV, 1 golden retriever. We all live in similar houses like I do. That is fatal. What you want to have is you want to have the young and wild together with the old and wild and experienced. You want to have different gender diversity. You want to have different ethnicities. And all of that you simply need. And I'm always using for my teams the inside colors, saying, okay, when I'm yellow, how many blue, red, and green people do I get on? So how do I manage really my diversity? And of course, what you also need to do is you want to have a healthy mix of flexibility and permanent employees if your business grows a little bit bigger. But with all of that, I tried to give you now in a few minutes, speed dating wise, my short recipe of how I look at new businesses, how I try to benchmark, and how I also try each year again to reinvent my own organization and drive the company forward. Thank you.
That was great. So Lars, if you want to take down your slide sharing so we can see people, and let's open up the floor for questions.
Stop sharing. Here's the button. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Either raise your hand or jump in. Okay, so I've got a question. Lars, you see so many startup companies and new technologies coming on board. What are some of the common mistakes when you see companies as they develop their strategy, particularly for scaling?
You mean what is a common mistake?
Yes.
Was your, yeah. Well, one of the mistakes is that people don't gauge the way correctly. They are very often starting from, we are selling the first 1 million devices and then we totally scale and it's all like, wow, we're blowing everything out of the water. But how do you do the first sales from 0 to the first 1 million? What is truly the industrialization risk? And people very often underestimate that this is a long and stony way to walk in the beginning. Do you have enough momentum to overcome the first part, or do you manage to get a big partner that helps you over the most difficult times? So very often people try to keep all their great ideas to their chest and don't move at all because someone could steal it, while very often it is much faster and much more rewarding to just go a bit more open play ecosystem and get the one or two big guys also hungry and say, yeah, but then let us grow together and I help you with the semiconductor, for example, and you do the business. And you don't have to shoulder the cost of a semiconductor development that can be obscenely high. Yeah, these type of approaches, so fundamentally to limited thinking, to narrow thinking in these first steps. That is the biggest mistakes that I see.
Great. Thorsten, you have a question? Unmute yourself, please.
Yes. Hi, Lars. Thank you for the great presentation. I have a question because I looked at the verticals or at the fields that you have on your strategy slide, and I didn't see big topics like climate change, healthcare, clean tech. Is it something that you're looking into and will incorporate later, or do you say it's outside of our strategy and we just don't touch it?
No, Thorsten. I mean, that is. So I could have gone to one higher level, and this is the biggest driver, of course. I mean, everything that you have seen there is fueled by the megatrends, because otherwise there is no willingness to invest by no one. So what we even doing as a company, we are one of the first semiconductor players who have launched green bonds. And the banks are super eager to lend us money for the green investors. Why? Because almost everything for carbon footprint optimizations that you see around us is driven on electronics. I'll just give you an example. 95% of all automotive innovation is electronics and the attached software. Of course, it's not mechanics anymore, or God knows what beyond it. So for power conversion on your laptops, for traveling, new powertrains, for smarter transportation, for better tagging, for climate control in your houses, in infrastructure. It's NXP, and some other semiconductor players as well. So,
identifying the mega trends is then top-down strategy, bottom-up strategy, strategy?
Honestly, I would call it, this is the core driver for the top-down strategy, and saying that is basically the justification in the background that it all gets the door open to the top-down strategy. Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
I mean, if you violate any of the mega trends, then potentially try another startup.
Very wise counsel. We got 3 more questions to get through. Vikram.
Hi, Lars. This is Vikram Sharma at Quintessence Labs. Thank you for a fascinating presentation. Incredible to see the broad application of NXP right across everything that touches our lives. I just had a quick question around workforce. Obviously that's perhaps the most critical resource, any company, but particularly critical for startups. And I was wondering if you have some thoughts on strategies to ensure workforce alignment and motivation as you scale a company.
So Vikram, what I'm doing, I personally I have quarterly calls with the R&D workforce, and we have about 9,000 engineers. And I'm usually doing a morning call and evening call just to cover all continents where we are on this. I 60 development centers inside the company that I have to reach somehow. And what I'm regularly doing is, on a quarterly basis, I'm giving a last town hall, and usually for each of my direct staff meetings, every second week, every quarter for these overall town halls, I have a 15-minute last weather forecast. And my guys are calling it that way. And it's like really shot from the hip, saying, how is the share market behaving? How are the political tensions moving? What does that mean for us? From the outside in, I'm really trying to bring that perspective. Very often that helps the people saying, okay, I don't agree with him, but I at least understand how he ticks. And that is giving buy-in that you have almost seamlessly, a complete alignment. Very often people come back, and that makes a lot of sense, of course, in terms of sharpening and optimizing your strategy. So when I say it's a top-down strategy, that is not that I'm the supervised man or any one of us in an ivory tower crafting something and firing it out. That's, of course, a dialogue process, and you somehow need to get this going. And you need to get your people into an active mode. The worst thing that can happen to me is that there is 9,000 engineers listening bottle of beer in the one hand, remote control on the other hand, watching what that monkey on stage is doing, right? Of course, what you want to have is you want to have them trying to repeat what you have said, trying to probe these strategies, the storytelling with their own family, their own ecosystem, and then get back to me and say, hey, Lars, in all fairness, this thing here worked, but that is complete disaster. My entire family doesn't, or my friends don't understand it. This is how our strategy came in place. And I mean, it sounds a bit like a hero story, 10 minutes, ivory tower, done. That is 12 years of heavy lifting now and sharpening and polishing. Yeah. So I don't want to overly mystify it here. Yeah?
Okay, we got Iwan and then we got Hemi, and then we'll take your questions offline. Iwan, please probably make it brief.
Hi, Lars. My name is Iwan. I'm from Manuf. I make electric vehicles. I have two questions. So my first question is related to my product, which is that one. It's an electric vehicle. So how far are we from really real autonomous driving? The reason why I ask you that is because like my vehicle, it's human operated vehicle, and it's meant to be human operated vehicle. It's not highly technological. It's just simple, reliable, and I think it's futuristic, just like your graphic. That's what I like to think of it.
So shot from the hip, I can tell you, of course, there is discussions on when are your kids driving to the kindergarten without a steering wheel and without you type of things. And then, of course, when is your car more intelligent than you yourself and so on. I'm very much at ease there. The willingness to pay for most people is enhancing your mobility in your vehicles to having a highway assist mode. So when you're driving not 10 kilometers, not 20 kilometers, but when you want to go a super long shot, 500 kilometers, my dad is going to visit me. My dad is in the 80s. He wants to press, as soon as he's on the motorway, he wants to press a button, say, take me northbound 500 kilometers to Hamburg. I visit Lars. And when he reaches the exit of the motorway, get off again. But these highway assist systems are comparatively simple and they require a driver. That's the one thing. For emerging countries and for two-wheelers especially, I see the world very, very differently. There, the big trend is, I mean, look at most of the mega cities in emerging countries. They have a pollution problem and they have traffic jam problems. And they are also weak in e-charging infrastructure. So the best that you can get there is you have a two-wheeler where you potentially even can take out the battery after the drive, like a big bucket or a handbrake or whatsoever. But you can take it, go to your own flat, put it in the wall socket and charge there. This is a theft control, and it is a great means of transportation in these mega cities to fight traffic jams. I don't see any two-wheelers at all go to autonomy anywhere soon. You will have assistance systems for the more complicated ones, but no worries, that business is spot on and is at its inflection point because you don't want to have all these exhaust gases in these big cities. So from that, I would be very much at ease and I would concentrate on pushing the electric two-wheelers.
And
just follow up one minute. So can I follow you 1 second? So when do you think Tesla is going to take the beta out of like the real driving thing? The autonomous beta. So when is it going to not label it beta anymore on Tesla's autonomous driving?
Potentially in 10 years, because the beta is just a legal protection.
So, but it's in 10 years time, then they will take it off the beta.
Potentially, but that is definitely a legal protection at the moment. But Victoria, you had another question.
No, yeah, we're a little over, but I want to make sure, as I said, I was going to get to Femi's question. So last question, please, Femi.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Lars. Just wanted to ask that regarding synchronized IP and tech roadmaps, especially for startups that have to roll out products really quickly, test them really quickly, but they have this regulatory constraints of if they don't patent really quickly, then they probably will lose the chance of doing that patenting. But they also have financial constraints of patenting everywhere. So how would you address it?
Well, very honestly, patents are working in a large part of the world. But if I have the choice, I'd rather go for speed than for patent. I can tell you, because in the end, you can sorry for my wording, but you can piss away a lot of money by trying to protect your great idea, and then just someone around you has a similar but equally efficient idea and is faster. I mean, how can you be sure that there is not another couple of billion other developers out there just with similar approaches, with slightly different ecosystems, slightly different view of the world, and they just run circles around you? If I have the chance, and we discussed it with our teams daily, I'm pressing them for rather be fast than protected, standalone. And then maybe even go ecosystem. If you anyhow cannot protect yourself, why not teaming up with some bigger gorillas that can help you in the market? We had that, for example, I have a startup here in Europe where they are getting energy harvesting out of plants. 2 electrodes into a tomato plant, and you get a sensor on LoRa network that tells you how much water that plant needs. Super, right? Undoable for that startup to get all the technical ingredients in. But for me, I mean, this is a great toy at the moment, but this energy harvesting, of course, the chip I could use in mass markets. So I have developed it for them. They can run, they have it all. I'm not hostile to them because our order of magnitude is so differently. I'm not an end customer set maker. I'm in a totally different ecosystem. But there is, of course, quite some fun in jointly developing there. So take partners that are not your direct competitors, play in that ecosystem, and be fast. And patents is always great, but don't get too obsessed on them.
And with that, if we didn't get to your questions, we're going to get them answered offline and revert via email. So thank you so much, Lars, for joining today and share your valuable advice on the keys to developing solid strategy. We very much benefited from your wisdom. And of course, thank you for all the startups for your engagement.
Hey, my pleasure, and all the best to all of you guys. And fire the questions to Victoria. If there's anything burning, I'll try to be as precise as possible in answering.
Will do. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.